The silver ships moved through space like deadly arrows. Each one was bigger than a city block and covered in crystal armor that sparkled in the starlight. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 300 years. They were strong, smart, and had no mercy for those who stood against them. Admiral Kextara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ship was 5 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy entire planets. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. His 4 arms moved quickly as he studied the reports coming in from across the Empire. "Sub-Commander Vilmer," he called out in his harsh voice. "Show me the expansion reports." Vilmer hurried over with a glowing tablet. He was smaller than the Admiral and always nervous around his superior. "Yes, Admiral. We have conquered 15 new worlds this year. The Thrakri put up some fight, but we crushed them in 2 weeks. The Belurians surrendered without firing a shot." "Good. What about the mining operations?" "Very successful, sir. We have extracted enough crystal fuel to power the fleet for another year. There is one thing, though." Vilmer hesitated. "Speak." Vilmer touched a tablet and a star map appeared in the air between them. It showed hundreds of star systems, most marked with the red symbol of the Zephyrian Empire. But there was one small yellow star that caught the Admiral's attention. "This system here," Vilmer pointed with a shaking finger. "It is called Sol. Our scouts found it 6 months ago." "And why should I care about one small system?" "It has a species called humans, Admiral. They live on the 3rd planet from their star. They are very primitive. They still use chemical rockets and metal bullets for weapons, but our scientists are worried about them." Admiral Kextara laughed. The sound was like metal scraping against stone. "You want me to fear primitives? What could possibly worry our scientists about creatures who cannot even leave their home system properly?" "It is hard to explain, sir. We studied their transmissions. We found records of their history. They fight constantly, not just with other species, but with themselves. In the last century alone, they have had 2 massive wars that killed millions of their own kind. They create new weapons faster than any species we have ever seen. So they are violent. Most primitive species are. But Admiral, it is more than that. They learn from every fight, adapt. They change their tactics based on what their enemies do. Our xenobiologists say they have a word for it. They call it evolution, but they do it with their minds, not just their bodies." Vilmer activated another display. It showed images captured by hidden Zephyrian spy drones. Humans in green uniforms moving through a jungle, working together like they could read each other's minds. Another image showed humans in white coats working in laboratories, building machines that looked surprisingly advanced. "Our deep space monitors have been watching them for months," Vilmer continued. "They detected our probe ships, even though we were using full stealth technology. They should not have been able to see us, but they did. They tried to intercept 3 of our scouts. Did they succeed?" "No, sir, but they came closer than they should have. Much closer." Admiral Kextara studied the images more carefully. The humans looked weak compared to Zephyrians. They had only 2 arms, soft skin, and small bodies. But something in their eyes bothered him. They looked alert, intelligent, and determined. "What do the scientists recommend?" "They want us to classify the humans as a dormant threat, sir. They suggest we establish a no-contact protocol and monitor them from a distance. The report says, and I quote, 'Do not wake the sleeping giant.'" "Sleeping giant?" The Admiral laughed again. "Look at them, Vilmer. They are tiny, weak, and stuck on one planet. We have ships that could turn their world to glass in an hour. How could they possibly threaten an empire that spans 12 star systems?" What Admiral Kextara did not know was that his conversation was being recorded. Hidden deep in an asteroid field at the edge of the Sol system, Captain Jake Morrison sat in a cramped observation post. His job was to watch for alien visitors and report back to Earth. He had been doing this boring work for 2 years. But today, everything changed. Morrison was a thin man with brown hair and sharp blue eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years, fighting in the Mars Rebellion and the asteroid mining wars. He knew the look of soldiers preparing for battle, and he had been seeing that look more and more on Earth lately. Control. This is Outpost 7. He spoke quietly into his communicator. I have visual and audio confirmation of alien contact. Species unknown, but they appear to be conducting surveillance of our system. Sending full recording now. 3 hours later, Dr. Lisa Carter received Morrison's report in a bunker buried 2 miles under the Colorado mountains. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. For the past 10 years, she had been preparing for this exact moment. Lieutenant Hughes. She called to her assistant. Activate Protocol 7. Send word to all division commanders. The timeline just moved up. Ben Hughes was young and eager, fresh out of the military academy. Ma'am, are you sure? We are? Not scheduled to complete the new ships for another 6 months. We will have to make do with what we have, Dr. Carter said firmly. Send a message to Admiral Blake. Tell her the Zephyrians think we are primitives. That gives us an advantage, but only if we move quickly. What about the public? Do we tell them? Not yet. We'll start moving the emergency supplies to the underground cities. If this goes wrong, we will need every shelter we can get. As Hughes hurried away to carry out her orders, Dr. Carter looked at the wall display showing Earth from space. It looked peaceful and blue, but she knew that was about to change. Hidden all over the planet and throughout the solar system, humans were preparing for war. Not the kind of war they had fought against each other, but a war for the survival of their entire species. The Zephyrians thought humans were primitive. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 2 years passed since the Zephyrians first discovered the humans. The alien empire grew larger, but also weaker. Managing so many worlds and species took enormous resources. Ships, soldiers, and supplies were stretched thin across 12-star systems. Admiral Kexthera, now Supreme Admiral of the entire Zephyrian fleet, sat in his command chamber aboard the Eternal Dominion. The room was dark, except for the glow of status displays showing the Empire's military positions. Reed lights blinked on several sectors, indicating problems that needed attention. Commander Zarthik entered the chamber with quick steps. He was younger than most Zephyrian officers, with bright yellow eyes that showed his ambition. He carried a datapad and looked excited about something. Supreme Admiral, Zarthik said, with a bow. I have a solution to our resource problems. Speak quickly. I have 3 other crises to deal with today. Zarthik activated his datapad and projected a hologram of the Sol system. It's a human system, sir. Our surveys show it contains massive mineral wealth. The asteroid belt alone has enough rare metals to fuel our expansion for 50 years. The 4th planet has crystal deposits that could power our entire fleet. The standing order is no contact with the humans, Kexthera reminded him. Yes, sir. But that order came from overcautious intelligence reports. I have studied these creatures for months. They are even more primitive than we first thought. Look at this. The hologram changed to show human military equipment. Zarthik pointed at tanks, jets, and soldiers with rifles. They still use projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Their fastest ships barely reach 1% of light speed. Our weakest shields can stop anything they have. Kexthera studied the images. The human weapons did look crude compared to Zephyrian energy cannons and plasma rifles. What are you proposing? A simple mining operation, sir. We take a small fleet, establish mining stations on their asteroid belt and outer planets, and avoid the populated worlds completely. The humans object, we disable a few of their ships, and they will understand our superiority. Quick, clean, profitable. The Supreme Admiral thought about this. The Empire desperately needed new resources. 3 frontier worlds had rebelled last month because they could not get enough supplies. The High Council was demanding results. How small a fleet? 12 mining vessels, sir. 6 escort destroyers for protection. 1 command ship to coordinate. Nothing that would seem like a full invasion force. And if the humans resist, our shields make us invulnerable to their primitive weapons, sir. We disable their ships, capture a few for study, and continue our work. Once they see our power, they will stay away. Against his better judgment, Kexthara made the decision that would doom his empire. Very well. Take your fleet and begin mining operations. But remember, disable only. No mass casualties unless absolutely necessary. We don't want to create martyrs. Understood, sir. We will be back with full cargo holds in 6 months. 3 weeks later, Zarthik's fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful and deadly, their crystal hulls catching the light from the yellow sun. The mining vessels immediately began work on the asteroid. While the destroyers took defensive positions, everything went smoothly for the first 5 days. The mining ships filled their holds with precious metals and rare elements. The human system seemed quiet and empty, except for a few primitive satellites. Then the humans came. The first ship to approach was small and white with blue markings. It moved slowly compared to Zephyrian vessels, using chemical rockets that left visible exhaust trails. On its side were the words New Horizon and a symbol showing planet Earth. Captain Amy Rodriguez commanded the New Horizon. She was a woman, in her 40s, with short black hair and calm brown eyes. She had been expecting this day for 2 years, ever since Earth's spy network detected the alien surveillance. Unknown vessels, she broadcast on all frequencies. You were operating in sovereign human space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. On the Zephyrian command ship, Zarthik listened to the transmission with amusement. I want to know our intentions, he told his crew. How adorable. Should we respond? Commander, asked his communications officer. Ignore them. They are not worth our time. But Captain Rodriguez was persistent. She brought her ship closer and continued broadcasting. Known vessels, you are mining in human territory without permission. We demand that you halt operations immediately and withdraw from our system. More human ships began to arrive. Small research vessels, cargo haulers, and what looked like primitive patrol boats. None of them were larger than a Zephyrian escort ship, and their weapons were obviously outdated. Commander, his weapons officer reported. We are detecting 15 human vessels approaching. They appear to be taking defensive positions around our mining operation. Zarthik was getting annoyed. These primitives were interfering with his schedule. Disabled their lead ship. Low power only. We want to send a message, not start a war. Yes, sir. The energy beam that struck the New Horizon was designed to knock out its engines and communications without causing serious damage. It should have left the ship drifting helplessly in space. But Captain Rodriguez had been expecting this attack. The New Horizon was not the primitive vessel it appeared to be. Hidden beneath its civilian exterior were military-grade systems that had been secretly developed over the past decade. Energy weapon impact, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Tom Carter. Hull integrity at 98%. Shields absorbed most of the damage. Shields. Zarthik stared at his displays in confusion. How did they have shield technology? Rodriguez activated her ship's transmitter one last time, but now she was not talking to the aliens. She was talking to Earth. Defense Command. This is New Horizon. The aliens have fired on us. They are using energy weapons, but nothing we cannot handle. Recommend immediate activation of all defensive protocols. Her message was picked up by listening posts throughout the solar system and transmitted to Admiral Susan Blake at Earth Defense Command. Blake was a tall woman with silver hair and steel gray eyes. She had been waiting for this moment her entire career. All stations. This is Admiral Blake. Execute Protocol 7 immediately. All defensive units to battle stations. All stealth units maintain concealment until ordered otherwise. Okay. The war has begun. What happened next shocked Zarthik to his core. The primitive human ships began moving with precision and coordination that seemed impossible for such a backward species. They surrounded his mining vessels and began broadcasting surrender demands in perfect Zephyrian language. Do they know our language? He demanded. Sir, we are detecting energy signatures from the human ships that match our own technology level. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports said they were primitives. Captain Rodriguez's ship moved closer to Zarthik's command vessel. Her voice came over the communication system, speaking in fluent Zephyrian. Commander Zarthik of the Zephyrian Empire, you have committed an act of war against the human republic. You have 30 minutes to surrender your vessels and submit to detention. If you refuse, we will take you by force. She knows my name, Zarthik whispered. How does she know my name? The truth was that Earth's intelligence network had been monitoring Zephyrian communications for 2 years. They knew the name of every ship captain, every military commander, and every government official in the alien empire. While the Zephyrians thought humans were primitive, the humans had been studying their enemies and preparing for war. Commander, what are your orders? His weapons officer asked. Zarthik looked at the human ships surrounding his fleet. They were outnumbered, but his vessels were still larger and more heavily armed. All ships, battle stations, showed these primitives. What happens when they threaten the Zephyrian Empire? The battle was about to begin, but it would not go the way Zarthik expected. The humans had learned something important from their violent history. The best way to win a fight was to make your enemy underestimate you until it was too late to recover. And for the Zephyrians, it was already too late. The moment Commander Zarthik ordered his ships to battle stations, alarms began ringing throughout the Sol system, in hidden bunkers and secret facilities. Military officers who had been waiting for this day sprang into action. Admiral Susan Blake stood in the command center, buried, deep under the Pacific Ocean. The room was filled with screens showing every ship, station, and weapon platform in the solar system. For 10 years, she had been preparing for this exact moment. All units, this is Blake. She spoke into her communicator. The enemy has opened fire on our vessels. Execute Sleeping Giant Protocol immediately. Show them what we really are. Cross the solar system. Things that looked like asteroids began to move. Space stations that appeared to be simple research platforms opened hidden weapon ports. Ships that had been floating dark and silent suddenly blazed to life with fusion engines. Captain Rick Chen commanded the UES Vengeance, one of 12 massive warships hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon. The ship was 3 times larger than any Zephyrian vessel, covered in armor that could stop plasma cannons and armed with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Captain, his tactical officer reported, we have confirmation of hostile contact. Enemy fleet is engaging our forward scouts near the asteroid belt. All hands to battle stations, Chen announced over the ship's communication system. This is what we trained for. It's time to show these aliens why you never mess with Earth. Back at the battle site, Zarthik watched his displays with growing confusion. His 6 destroyers had opened fire on the human ships with their most powerful energy weapons. The beams should have vaporized the primitive vessels instantly. Instead, human ships absorbed the energy and kept fighting. Report, Zarthik shouted at his weapons officer. Sir, our energy cannons are having no effect. The human ships appear to have some kind of adaptive shielding. Every shot we fire just makes their defenses stronger. That's impossible. They're primitives. Captain Amy Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system again, still speaking perfect Zephyrian. Commander Zarthik, you seem surprised. Did you really think we spent 2 years doing nothing while you spied on us? We've been preparing for this war since the day we detected your first scout ship. You knew we were watching you? Of course, we knew. We've been watching you too. We know about your crystal fuel shortages, your rebellious colonies, and your stretched supply lines. We know the names of your officers, the locations of your bases, and the weaknesses of your ships. How you saw us as primitives, we saw you as our next enemy. Sarthik felt cold fear creeping up his spine. All ships fall back to defensive formation. Send distress signal to the Eternal Dominion. Request immediate reinforcements. But his communications officer looked up with panic in his eyes. Sir, we cannot send messages. The humans are jamming all our frequencies. We are cut off. When the real human fleet arrived, ships began appearing from everywhere. They came from behind asteroids, from the shadows of planets, from empty space where nothing should have been. Each one was sleek, deadly, and obviously built for war. 60 human vessels now on our sensors, the tactical officer reported. Wait, 100, sir. They keep appearing. Where are they all coming from? Captain Chen's ship, the Vengeance, moved toward the battle like a hunting shark. His crew had trained for this moment for years. Unlike the Zephyrians, who relied on superior technology and brute force, the humans had studied every successful military strategy in their violent history. It's tactical. Target the enemy command ship. Chen ordered. Do not destroy it. I want it disabled and boarded. We need their computers intact. Sir, firing quantum torpedoes. The weapons that struck Zarthik's ship were unlike anything the Zephyrians had encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the humans used missiles. They could think for themselves. The torpedoes adapted their attack patterns in real time, finding weaknesses in the alien shields and exploiting them with surgical precision. Zarthik's command ship shuddered under the impact. Lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Damage report. Engines offline, weapon systems disabled, life support at 50%. Sir, they targeted our specific systems. They knew exactly where to hit us. On the Vengeance, Dr. Angela Morris smiled as she watched her electronic warfare programs take effect. She was a small woman with red hair and sharp green eyes. But her computer skills were legendary throughout the Earth Defense Force. Captain Chen, she reported, I have successfully penetrated the enemy ship's computer networks, downloading their tactical databases now. We will have complete intelligence on their fleet positions within minutes. This was what made humans different from every other species the Zephyrians had fought. Other races relied on superior weapons or stronger shields. Humans used their brains. They studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and turned every advantage against them. The battle continued for 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others were doing. They had practiced these tactics in secret for years, preparing for the day when they would face a technologically superior enemy, one by one. The Zephyrian ships were disabled or destroyed. The mining vessels surrendered quickly when they realized their escorts could not protect them. The destroyers fought bravely, but were overwhelmed by human ships that seemed to predict their every move. When the battle ended, Zarthik found himself a prisoner aboard the Vengeance. Captain Chen stood before him in the ship's detention area, studying the alien commander with curious eyes. You want to know how we did it? Chen said. It was not a question. Your species is supposed to be primitive, Zarthik said weakly. Chemical rockets and metal bullets. That's what our intelligence reports said. Your intelligence reports were correct as far as they went. We do still use chemical rockets and metal bullets, but we also use fusion drives, quantum computers, and adaptive AI systems. So primitive weapons were what we wanted you to see. It's impossible. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. Jen smiled coldly. Your technology is impressive, but it has one major flaw. It made you arrogant. You stopped learning, stopped adapting, stopped preparing for real war. We never stopped. Every human child learns about warfare from the moment they can read. Every human adult knows that peace is just the time between battles. Dr. Kate Sullivan, the ship's interrogation specialist, entered the detention area. She was a quiet woman who had studied alien psychology for 15 years. Captain, I'm ready to begin questioning the prisoner. How long do you need to extract their military codes and fleet positions? Give me 6 hours. These Zephyrians are proud, but not particularly strong-willed. I should have everything we need by tonight. Sarthik stared at the humans in horror. You cannot break Zephyrian mental conditioning. Our minds are protected by psychic barriers. Dr. Sullivan laughed softly. We don't use psychic techniques. We use something much more effective. Use the one thing humans have always been better at than any other species. What is that? We understand fear. We know exactly what scares you, what motivates you, and what will make you tell us everything we want to know. Your psychic barriers mean nothing against good, old-fashioned psychological pressure. As Dr. Sullivan began her work, Admiral Blake received the first reports from the battle. The human victory had been complete and overwhelming. Not a single human ship had been seriously damaged, while the entire Zephyrian mining fleet was either destroyed or captured. But Blake knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when Supreme Admiral Kextera arrived with the full power of the Zephyrian military. Earth had won the first battle by surprise and superior tactics. The next battle would determine whether humanity would survive as a free species or become another conquest of an alien empire. Blake smiled grimly as she prepared her orders. The Zephyrians were about to learn that waking up the human race was the worst mistake they had ever made. Supreme Admiral Kextora stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as his massive fleet approached the Sol system. Behind him came 200 of the most powerful warships in the Zephyrian Empire, dreadnoughts that could crack planets, cruisers armed with plasma cannons, can destroyers equipped with the latest shield technology. He had received Sarthik's distress signal 3 days ago. Been nothing. Complete silence from the mining operation. Kextara assumed the worst, but prepared for a simple rescue mission. How much trouble could a few primitive humans really cause? Admiral, his communications officer reported. We are entering the outer edge of the human system. No contact from Commander Sarthik's fleet. Begin full sensor sweep. Find our ships. What the sensors found made Kextera's blood run cold. Scattered pieces of Zephyrian vessels drifted in the asteroid belt. The mining ships were gone, either destroyed or captured. Only debris remained of his advanced force. Impossible, he whispered. Where are the humans? Their primitive fleet should be scattered across space if they dared attack us. Answer came in the form of a single ship. The UES Retribution appeared directly in front of the Zephyrian fleet, moving slowly and calmly toward the massive armada. It was smaller than most Zephyrian dreadnoughts, but built with clean, deadly lines that spoke of advanced engineering. Admiral Susan Blake sat in the command chair of her flagship, surrounded by the most experienced officers in the human military. She had chosen this ship personally for this moment. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Open a channel to the Zephyrian fleet, she ordered. Channel open, Admiral. Blake's voice carried across space to every ship in Kextara as Armada. Supreme Admiral Kextara of the Zephyrian Empire. I am Admiral Susan Blake of the Human Republic. You are guilty of acts of war against a sovereign species. Surrender your fleet immediately, and you will be treated according to the rules of war. Refuse, and face the consequences. On the Eternal Dominion, Kextara's officers stared at their displays in disbelief. A single human ship was threatening their entire fleet. Admiral, his tactical officer said, sensors show only one enemy. Vessel, shall we disable it and capture their commander? Kextera's rage overcame his common sense. 200 ships against one. The humans had clearly lost their minds. All ships, target that vessel. Full power, destroy it completely. The 7th Fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams that could melt mountains converged on the human ship. Plasma bolts, hot enough to vaporize asteroids, struck its hull. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. When the light faded, the Retribution floated unchanged in space. Report, Kextera shouted. Double quote, sir. Our weapons had no effect. The human ship appears to have absorbed our entire attack. This is impossible with any known technology. Admiral Blake's voice came over the communication system again, calm and confident. Your turn is over, Supreme Admiral. Now it's ours. The Sol system exploded with activity. Ships appeared from everywhere. They came from behind planets, from asteroid fields, from empty space where advanced stealth technology had hidden them completely. Not dozens of ships, but hundreds. Each one was armed and ready for battle. Sensor contact, the Zephyrian Tactical Officer reported in a shaking voice. 200 human vessels. No, wait. 300, sir. They keep appearing. How many ships do they have? Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the destroyer Horizon's Edge, one of the newest ships in the human fleet. He was a veteran of the Mars colonial wars and knew how to fight against superior numbers. All ships execute Formation 7. He heard Admiral Blake order over the fleet communication system. Target their command vessels first. We want their computers intact for intelligence gathering. The human fleet moved like a living thing. Each ship knew exactly where it needed to be and what it needed to do. They had practiced these maneuvers thousands of times in secret, preparing for the day when they would face the full might of an alien empire. The Zephyrians had superior numbers and firepower, but the humans had something more important. They had strategy. Commander Lisa Park led a squadron of fast attack ships against a group of Zephyrian cruisers. Instead of meeting them head-on, her ships used hit-and-run tactics that confused and frustrated the alien commanders. Target their weapon systems, she ordered. Disable, don't destroy. We want those ships captured, if possible. Dr. Angela Morris coordinated the electronic warfare from her station aboard the Retribution. Her team had spent years studying captured Zephyrian technology, learning how their computers worked and how to turn them against their creators. Admiral Blake, she reported, I have successfully penetrated their command network, uploading virus programs now. Their ships should start experiencing system failures within minutes. This was what made the human military so dangerous. They did not just rely on better weapons or stronger ships. They used intelligence, coordination, and tactics that turned every enemy's strength into a weakness. The battle raged across the entire solar system for 6 hours. Human ships attacked from unexpected directions, used weapons that adapted to counter Zephyrian defenses, coordinated their assaults with precision that seemed almost supernatural. Captain Tony Martinez led the assault on the Zephyrian dreadnought with his heavy cruiser Thunderbolt. Instead of trying to match the alien ship's firepower, he used speed and maneuverability to stay out of its weapon arcs, while his boarding teams prepared for assault. Boarding pods away, his tactical officer reported. Marines are ready to capture the enemy bridge. The Zephyrians fought bravely, but they were not prepared for human infantry tactics. The Marines who boarded their ships moved with deadly efficiency. Using combat techniques learned from centuries of human warfare, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh led one of the boarding teams onto a Zephyrian cruiser. Her soldiers moved through the alien ship like ghosts, avoiding enemy patrols and striking at critical systems with surgical precision. Bridge secured, she reported over her radio. Enemy command crew captured. Ship is ours. One by one, Zephyrian vessels fell to human attacks. Some were destroyed outright, but most were captured intact. The humans wanted the ships, the technology, and most importantly, the information stored in their computers. As the battle reached its climax, Supreme Admiral Kexthara found himself surrounded by human ships. His once mighty fleet was scattered, wreckage drifting through space. The Eternal Dominion, damaged and defenseless, was boarded by human marines. Admiral Blake herself came aboard to accept his surrender. She walked onto his bridge with a small escort of soldiers, looking calm and confident despite being surrounded by alien technology. How? Kexthara asked in a broken voice. We had the superior fleet, the better weapons, the advanced technology. How did primitives destroy us so completely? Blake studied the defeated alien commander with cold eyes. You made the same mistake that every bully makes, Admiral. You assumed that might makes right. You thought your advanced technology made you invincible. Okay, our empire spans 12 star systems. We have conquered dozens of species. And that was your weakness, Blake replied. You became conquerors instead of warriors. You relied on your superior technology instead of superior tactics. You forgot that war is not about who has the biggest guns. It's about who can think faster, adapt quicker, and fight smarter. Tall Kate Sullivan entered the bridge with her team of intelligence specialists. Admiral, we're ready to begin extracting information from their databases. How long do you need? Take as much time as necessary. I want everything. Fleet positions, supply routes, military codes, government structures. When we're finished, we'll know more about their empire than they do. Kexthara stared at the humans in growing horror. You cannot mean to attack our home worlds. We have families, civilians, entire populations. We have no interest in conquest, Blake said firmly. But we will not allow your empire to threaten other species. Your days of bullying weaker civilizations are over. As human technicians began downloading the Zephyrian databases, Blake thought about the messages she would soon send to alien worlds throughout their empire. Messages that would tell enslaved species that the Zephyrian military had been destroyed. Tease that their oppressors were powerless and that freedom was within their reach. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology for 3 centuries, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. An enemy that learned from every battle, adapted to every challenge, and never, ever gave up. In 6 hours, the most powerful fleet in Zephyrian history had been reduced to floating scrap metal and captured vessels. The empire that had seemed invincible was about to discover that there were some species in the galaxy simply could not be conquered. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Zephyrian Empire was falling apart. News of their fleet's complete destruction had spread across the galaxy faster than their government could control. Enslaved species that had suffered under alien rule for centuries saw their chance for freedom. Tactini Martinez stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty, as it approached the industrial world of Kefter. This planet had been the heart of Zephyrian weapon production for 200 years. Massive factories covered its surface, building the ships and weapons that kept the empire strong. Its captain, his tactical officer, reported, "We are detecting minimal orbital defenses. Most of their fleet units have been withdrawn to protect the core worlds." Good. Begin the liberation protocol. Sent word to the underground resistance that help has arrived. The human strategy was simple but effective. Instead of trying to conquer Zephyrian worlds, they liberated them. They gave weapons and training. 2 enslaved species helped organize rebellions, provided support when local populations rose up against their oppressors. Commander Sarah Walsh led the ground operation on Kefter. Her soldiers worked alongside Thrakari rebels, the same species that had been crushed by the Zephyrians 3 years earlier. Now they fought with human weapons and human tactics. "The main factory complex is secured," she reported over her radio. "The Zephyrian workers have surrendered. Kari want to execute them, but I've convinced them to follow the human rules of war. This was another difference between humans and other species. Even in war, humans had rules. They protected civilians, treated prisoners fairly, and rebuilt what they conquered. It made other species trust them and want to fight alongside them. Dr. Helen Parker, now serving as Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy, negotiated with representatives from dozens of formerly enslaved worlds. She worked from a converted Zephyrian space station that had become the temporary seat of the new Galactic Liberation Council. The Bellurians want our help setting up their new government, she told Admiral Blake during their weekly conference call. The Macarans are asking for human advisors to train their defense forces. Everyone wants to be our ally, Blake replied from her flagship orbiting Earth. But remember, we're not trying to build our own empire. Help them become independent. Then step back. The last thing the galaxy needs is humans acting like the Zephyrians did. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Zephyrian government struggled to maintain control of their remaining territories. High Chancellor Morthic, once the second most powerful being in the Empire, now commanded only a handful of refugee ships and one small colony world. He sat in his cramped office aboard the transport vessel Last Hope, reading reports of disaster after disaster. 12 star systems reduced to one planet. Billions of loyal citizens now living under alien rule. The greatest empire in galactic history reduced to ashes. Chancellor, his aide whispered, the humans are requesting another meeting. They want to discuss final surrender terms. Send them away. The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to primitives. But even as he spoke those words, Morthic knew they were empty. The primitives had destroyed his entire civilization in less than a year. They had turned his own weapons against him, freed his slaves, reduced his mighty empire to nothing. The final meeting took place on Neutral Station, a trading post that had somehow avoided the war. Ambassador Parker sat across from Chancellor Morthic in a simple conference room. Between them lay the documents that would officially end the Zephyrian Empire. The terms are generous, Parker said quietly. Your people get to keep their colony world. You will have full self-government as long as you never again attack another species. Your war criminals will face trial, but ordinary citizens will be left in peace. Do you expect me to sign away 3 centuries of Zephyrian dominance? Chancellor, your empire is already gone. I'm offering you a chance to save what's left of your people. Sign the treaty, and they can have peaceful lives. Refuse, and they'll remain refugees forever. Morthic stared at the human ambassador. She was small and soft-looking, nothing like the mighty Zephyrian warriors who had once ruled the galaxy. Yet, this fragile creature represented a species that had destroyed everything he had ever known. How? He asked, finally. How did your primitives defeat us so completely? Parker considered the question carefully. We weren't primitives, Chancellor. We were survivors. Every species you conquered gave up when you showed them superior technology. Humans don't give up. We adapt, we learn, and we fight back harder than before. But your weapons, your ships, they were so advanced. Where did you get such technology? We built it ourselves. When we detected your first scout ships, we knew war was coming. So we did what humans always do when faced with a stronger enemy. We got smarter, faster, and more dangerous than you could imagine. Yes. With shaking hands, Morthic signed the surrender documents. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled 12 star systems and enslaved dozens of species, officially ceased to exist. 1 year later, the new Galactic Council met for the first time in the rebuilt chambers on Central Station. Representatives from 63 species gathered to establish laws for interstellar relations. The Zephyrians had a single representative with no voting power. Admiral Blake, now serving as humanity's first galactic coordinator, stood to address the assembly. The room fell silent as the woman who had destroyed the greatest empire in known history prepared to speak. Fellow beings, she began, we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals working toward a peaceful galaxy. The human species asks for nothing more than to be left alone to live our lives in peace. She continued, and her voice became hard as steel. We have learned that peace must be protected. Therefore, this council will establish the Galactic Defense Force to protect all member species from aggression. A Throckary delegate stood up. Who will command this defense force? Who has the strength to protect us all? Blake looked around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule. The defense force will be commanded jointly by all member species, but humanity will provide the backbone of military leadership, training, and advanced weaponry. Why should we trust humans with such power? Asked a Bellurian representative. It's because, Blake replied simply, we've already had the power to conquer all of you, and we chose not to use it. We destroyed the Zephyrian Empire, not to replace it with our own, but to ensure that no species would ever again dominate others through force. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Defense Force was established with human leadership and a simple mandate: protect the weak from the strong, can ensure that never again would one species terrorize all others. The new Galactic Constitution contained dozens of laws governing trade, diplomacy, and conflict resolution, but one law stood above all others. Carved in crystal letters above the council chamber doors: any species that commits unprovoked aggression against another will face the full response of the Galactic Defense Force. But there is one species that requires special consideration. Humanity asks only to be left in peace. All species are advised to remember this lesson. Humans are not primitive, okay? They are not weak, and they are never to be disturbed without cause. In the years that followed, human ships patrolled the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They proved that the most dangerous species in the universe was not the one with the biggest weapons or the strongest shields. It was the one that learned from every battle, adapted to every challenge, and never forgot a lesson written in the blood of their enemies. The Zephyrian Empire was remembered only in history books and warning messages. Their greatest monument was a beacon placed at the edge of human space, broadcasting a simple message to any species that might be listening. Here lie the ashes of those who ignored the one rule that keeps the galaxy safe: don't disturb the humans. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity slept peacefully, knowing that their enemies would never again mistake their desire for peace as a sign of weakness.